You ready? Let's do this. Welcome back to the GROklahoma Podcast. Today, I'm thrilled to have a wonderful guest in the studio. He's an assistant professor in the Department of Family and Preventive Medicine at the University of Oklahoma Health Sciences Center. His research program is dedicated to eliminating cancer-related health disparities, particularly among African Americans or Blacks and socioeconomically disadvantaged populations. It has a focus on mobile health and community-engaged research, and he's also actively involved in developing and evaluating smartphone-based apps to treat smoking behavior and increase cancer screening uptake within these communities. His work extends to populations facing unique challenges, such as adults experiencing homelessness and adults living with serious mental illness. Today, we're going to talk about a lot of stuff, but before then, please join me in welcoming Dr. Alexander Adam to the podcast. Hey.
So happy to be on. Thank you for the invite. I just look forward to sharing my work and some of my background with your audience. So thank you for having me again.
Thank you. The honor is all ours. So let's start from the beginning. Can you just share a little bit about your upbringing and early life experiences?
Of course. So I like to tell people that I come from a law enforcement family. And so I'm the kid who I grew up in the 90s. So I saw literally every cop movie from that era: Die Hard, Bad Boys, U.S. Marshals, any cop movie, RoboCop. I've probably seen it many times over. That's one of the benefits of being in a law enforcement family. And my older brother, I have two brothers. My older brother, he is a police officer currently. My younger brother was also a police officer for a time. My friends, mostly law enforcement. And so I'm like the black sheep of the family. A lot of people in my family don't really understand what I do. But I think being from that background gives me a unique perspective, not only of the way I look at my research, but also just the way I interact with people when I'm out in the community. And so at first, when I was growing up, I looked at being from a law enforcement family as a detriment because, I was really trying to connect with people a similar age at the time when I was growing up. But now I really look at it as a strength.
As a privilege, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that's a little bit of my early life experiences. I'm trying to think of anything else that might be important.
Where'd you grow up? Was it Oklahoma?
Oh, no, that's a great question. So I actually grew up in Memphis, Tennessee. And I actually went to University of Memphis for all three of my degrees. I did not leave Memphis until I decided to come here to Oklahoma to work at OU. So this is essentially the second place I have lived at in my life. And I'm hoping that I'll be able to stay here, for the remainder.
What brought you to Oklahoma, by the way?
A job, essentially what most people you travel these days for when it's for like a really long stay, like a job. So when I was finishing my doctoral degree, my mentor at the time, Dr. Ward, he asked me, "Hey, Adam, what do you want to do with your life?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I'm getting this PhD and I still don't really know what I want to do with my life." And he said, "Well, Adam, you're really good at research. And so I think you should pursue a postdoc." And he described what a postdoc was. And I said, okay, that's a great idea. So I placed one application in for a postdoctoral fellowship. And that was with the Oklahoma Tobacco Research Center, working under Michael and Darla. And with Darla being my primary mentor. I should say Dr. Kinzer for the audience. Dr. Kinzer at the Oklahoma Tobacco Research Center, which is now known as the Health Promotion Research Center. And when I interviewed at the time, I got to meet Dr. Busanel, Dr. Kinzer, as well as others, and they were really impressed, with my interview. And so at the end, they asked, during the interview, do you want to work here? And I was floored. I was absolutely floored because I was thinking I was going to go back home and wait. Yeah. They were pressuring me in my face. At the moment, I'm like, well, can I go home and think about this? I've never really lived anywhere outside of Memphis. And this was just like a one-off shot. And I wasn't expecting to get this reaction. And so I told them I was going to go home and think about it, and I did. Luckily it was over that winter break, so I had time to really sit down with family and talk about the experience with them. They were very supportive, and so I said yes, and the rest is history.
Wow, we're so happy to have you here. And I want to go back to what you said earlier on about your mentor asking you what you want to do with your life. And I imagine that most grad students, because I went through that phase as well. So for the grad students that are listening to this, it's okay to just take one step at a time, even if you can't see the forest for the trees, but it's all going to make sense. And, just wanted to drop that encouragement. So you grew up in a law enforcement family, and then here you're doing research. And I understand just the challenges of having to explain what we do to our family members. My parents just know I'm a professor somewhere, but to the nitty-gritty of what I do, they have no idea. But what would you say if you had any experiences in your childhood that would have led you to your current path of, I'm not going to law enforcement like, most of your family members, but research is so niche. Like, what about research do you think attracted you to, doing this line of work?
That's an excellent question. So I love to write, no matter if it's creative writing, scientific writing, or even journalistic writing. I just love to write. And so I think being a researcher, especially as a full-time researcher, you have to be able to write. And so I think that's one of the skills I've had growing up and that I've been able to develop from an early age that's really allowed me to flourish as a researcher. But it really wasn't until I went to undergraduate school where I really found research. I'll just describe a little bit of my high school experience, and it was I wouldn't say traumatic, but there was some traumatic experiences there around bullying and other things that left me really, depressed in my mind a lot. And I didn't really think at the time when I exited high school that there was a path for me out there. But I did make a promise to myself that, I was going to try to do the best I could, that I knew I could in my mind, in college, because I barely got scholarships. I remember making a 21 on the ACT. That's like the minimum score needed to qualify for a state-funded scholarship called the Hope Scholarship in Tennessee. And that supported me through my time as an undergraduate student in the University of Memphis. And so I made a promise to myself that, I'm going to come to the University of Memphis and just do the best I can. I don't exactly know what I want to do, but I do know that I want to do the best I can in these classes. And so luckily, I was in a research statistics course in psychology, because my background is in psychology before switching to public health. And I had a professor by the name of Dr. Leslie Robinson, will always remember her to this day, because what she did just really changed, I think, my life path. I remember going in there, I was making A's on everything, but I was the person sitting in the back of the class with the hood on, headphones on, just totally despondent. Didn't really engage in the class, but I did really well on the on the assignments. And so she actually stopped me one day after class, and she said, Adam, you are doing extraordinary, this amazing in this class. And I really think you should try to pursue some outside activities. Like, she asked me, what do you have going on? I said, nothing really. I just go to school and go home, play video games. And at the time. But she said, how about you come see me after class, sit in my office, and we'll talk about some opportunities for you. And I said, all right, let's do that. And I came to her office and we chatted about, research and what exactly that was. And she gave me the opportunity to come work in her lab, which at the time was focused on tobacco use among middle and high school students. And I did it. And when I got in there and started working with her team, I realized that, hey, this is like a natural fit to me, because just on a computer, looking at data, not really interacting with anyone. And then when I write a paper or something, that's seen as a success. And I'm like, wow, I really like this model. Is this something I could make a career out of? And so I kept talking with her, and she helped, kind of guide me down the path of becoming the researcher that I am, today. So I'm just incredibly thankful, because if she hadn't been there and it stopped me in that hallway, who knows where I would be, in this life. So.
But then also kudos to you, though, because you stuck to that promise to do your best. And it was that best that made you stand out for her to be able to engage with you. So kudos to you as well. So shout out to Dr. Robinson if she ever gets to listen to this episode. Now, going back to your research, now let's try and distill it down. How would you explain your research in simple terms to a fifth grader? What are your short and long-term career goals?
Oh, well, that's a lot, because trying to describe
we can keep it short.
It's very difficult. But I will say that so I do health disparities research very broadly, meaning that I'm looking for differences in health outcomes between groups. Now, the way we do health disparities research in the United States, we typically compare, racial and ethnic groups or our income brackets with, the most well-off, or what we see as the most influent in society. When it comes to race, that's generally the white population. When it comes to income, that's generally people who are making, $50K, $100K or more, whatever we specify. And so I'm looking for differences in health outcomes, health behaviors between those populations. And so I can't focus on all the health behaviors, so that'll just be a lot of information you need to consume. So I just tend to focus on health disparities within a few health behaviors and health outcomes. That usually is smoking and smoking cessation. So looking at differences between populations when it comes to their chances of being able to successfully quit smoking, or differences in their smoking behavior, such as smoking more cigarettes within a day, or their preference for cigarette type. And I also focus on health disparities related to cancer screening. For example, whether or not people have access to the prostate-specific antigen test. What we find here, especially in Oklahoma, is that there are certain populations, let's just say Black and the African-American population, who have a lower rate of screening or PSA screening than the white population. And so I like to really focus on the health disparities area. And my special population of interest is the African-American population, or Black and African-American population, because I think that's very close to my heart, because I come from that community. And also because our community, we really struggle with a lot of health conditions and health behaviors that ultimately, reduce our overall life expectancy and our quality of life.
I agree. And thank you so much for even sharing that. And I think it's amazing that we have, a lot of efforts being made in highlighting these disparities, but not just only highlighting them, but even working at interventions that can help improve overall outcomes when it comes to this marginalized population. And as you know, our work we have some intersectionality with our work. I do work with prostate cancer and also work with Black population. And one of the things I've had to work on myself is avoiding that short-sightedness from over-familiarity. So people say, oh, you're so lucky you're doing research in Black people. I'm like, no, but we're so different. Like, Black is not a monolithic concept. I'm African, and I'm African doing work with people who are my people, but not almost always my people, because we still have these differences we have to navigate. So I'm curious to know how you're able to navigate, working with, Black communities, especially ensuring cultural sensitivity and avoiding short-sightedness from over-familiarity.
Once again, excellent question. So I have a rule, and when I go out into the community and I'm trying to do, community-based work with the Black population, even though I am a member of that group, is that if I'm speaking more than I'm listening, then I'm doing something wrong. So I'm always, actively listening to the people I'm speaking with in the community. So one, I can accurately identify and understand their needs. And two, really figure out the ways that we can work together to address a particular issue. And so I think when you listen, you find that a lot of things that come after that occur naturally, because you have more information to work off of. You get to understand the person you're talking to. I think it actually helps you develop empathy and sympathy towards that person and the condition and the problem they're going with. And so I think that's just the number one rule I apply, just listening. And I think that helps me, check my biases, because you're right. Even though we share the same skin color, we have a profound set of differences. And so, and I'll speak just a personal example of mine is I work a lot with faith-based communities. And I have a upbringing that's centered around faith, but as I've gotten older, I've taken a few steps back from that, aspect of my life. And so having to work with people from the faith-based community, I have to check a lot of my biases coming in the door, because even if you are no longer, let's say, as involved in the faith community, you still have to, show the respect that community, is deserves. And so I make sure I'm referring to the people I'm working with in their proper titles. I'm respecting the rules of prayer. I'm honoring those customs and practices they've worked very hard to establish, sometimes over decades. And so, and that takes a lot for some people. Some people can't do that because they've, been persuaded, on the other side of things, and they are not as, show as much respect towards those practices. Whereas I kind of venerate them because I think it really brings people together in a positive way.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it also goes back to what you want to get out of it. If you want to cultivate trust, you have to be very intentional about that. And so I'm wondering if you would have maybe additional layers of suggestions for people who are entering these communities who don't look like them or speak like them, but they are very passionate about, working together. What are additional steps they can take in ensuring they build that trust and everyone works together in a very copacetic way?
Yeah, another simple rule of mine that I like to follow is you have to be there for them before they'll be there for you. And so when you go into a community and you want to do work, you need to invest time in that community before you can, I'll use the word, reap the benefits, because I when I was first started to work in the community, once again, I'm from Memphis, Tennessee, not from Oklahoma, don't really know the Oklahoma scene that well. Even I'll say this to this day. And so when I'm going to do a community-based project, I'm first just going to start volunteering within the community, like do some food drives, just go to the churches, just talk to people as people first. And then when you build those relationships and build those connections, that's when you start talking about, partnerships for research or advocacy, et cetera, because you when you're asking someone to do something, that's time out of their day to help you.
Correct.
And so you need to be willing to take time out of your day to help them. And usually that involves you doing it first so they can see that, hey, this is a person who really means well, and they can start developing that trust. And that's when you move, to the next step of then pursuing whatever, what your agenda is that actually takes into account what their agenda might be as well. So
I agree. And if you're able to even do that, establishing a community advisory board, and I know we both have ours, and they serve as just a link to the community to make sure that our work is done in a very culturally appropriate way. Because as scientists, as academic researchers, we are so full of knowledge, but sometimes it might not be quite practicable. So making sure that you're ensconced in the community and you're working together with your population of interest will also be another thing I'd like to add to the hat. So you work with socioeconomically disadvantaged population, right? What role would you say cultural competence plays in addressing health disparities, especially when you're looking at African Americans and socioeconomically disadvantaged populations? Why is it important for us to even think about cultural competence?
Oh, wow. Because you have to be able to reach the population you want to, help. I'm thinking not even about the Black population right now. I'll definitely address that. But when I was a postdoc, I actually worked with adults experiencing homelessness here at a day shelter here in the city. And that experience for me was absolutely, transformative when it comes to working with population. Because I was there one day every week trying to get people who have no shelter, who may not even be there next week, to participate in a research project. And how can you motivate or get someone excited about that when they're struggling to find a consistent place to stay? It involves what we do with people who are not, in that situation, actually talking with them, listening to them, and just treating them as humans. I think some of the times, because we're researchers and we're looking at aggregate, large groups, and we're thinking of people as subjects, that we lose the human aspect behind it. And when you're really out there in the community and trying to, do something with partners, you have to look at it as a human experience and not as a research experience. And so when you look at it from a human experience, I think you need to be okay with things not going the way you want it to go because, it's going to affect your validity or something like that. You have to deal with those errors and be able to adjust and be flexible if you really want to, truly achieve something, I think, great. And with that population, because we're able to build that rapport, we eventually were able to build a smoking cessation program with that within a population that's very transient. And we still had challenges there, but I don't think we would have been able to pull that study off if we didn't build those relationships by going and talking with that population. So it's got to put in the time and the work. And I know in the academic environment, we're often operating off deadlines, but there really is no deadline when it comes to building a friendship and a partnership between someone. That is a continual process that you need to invest time in.
So true. It takes a lot of time, but the irony of it is that the time you spend investing in that is actually time you save later in the future. And with a lot of funders now trying to tag on community engagement, it's been very, very hard for you to get funded for some projects if you don't have that buy-in from the community. So just, it takes a lot of time and effort, but you have to be very intentional about that because it can see through your fakeness if you're faking it. So just a heads up. Yeah. Thank you for that. I usually ask this question towards the end, but I think it would really tie into what you've been talking about. In your opinion, what are some key research questions you should be exploring when it comes to your line of interest, your research interest?
Oh, wow. I have multiple lines of research, as I mentioned earlier, when it comes to health disparities. I just mentioned two, but some of the questions that I'm like recently focused on, right now and very intensely is like the idea of home health, whether it's taking a PSA test, taking a test that screens for cancer, or it's the same thing, but other types of cancer. I'm really looking at bringing those screening tools that have once been used in the clinic into the home. And I think that's really, and the conversations I think really has changed with with COVID and how we were doing COVID testing at home. And so I'm really looking at projects that are aimed at increasing access to quality screening tools that can be done within the home. That way, when they have a result that's, let's say in the case of PSA that's elevated, they can use that as kind of the first step towards action to making sure they go and get their appropriate follow-up care. And because I think it just lowers the barrier in terms of one, access, and two, it I think in an individual way, it lowers that, the amount of effort needed to take the test. For example, when looking at the PSA, you no longer have to think about, I have to schedule time to go into the clinic. Hopefully the nursing staff will be polite to me. You don't need to think about these variables. It's just, I click a button, the kit's going to come to my home, and I'm going to complete it within the comfort of my home, send those results off, wait a little bit, and then I'll find out, exactly what I need to do. And that's the model that we have in our current clinical trial focused on prostate cancer screening. And we found that it works. And so now that I know that it works, I want to expand it to other cancer types and to other, behaviors where home health can really be a powerful tool in helping people make that behavior change.
Oh, great. For those who I know, be very familiar with this area of research, what are some additional considerations you had to put in place when working with this unique population, especially with your mobile health interventions, to ensure that it's accessible to the population that you're working with?
Yeah, that's a great question. Now, for our current clinical trial focused on home health with prostate cancer screening with Black men, we wanted to really try to balance rigor with, external validity, in terms of being generalizable. So for this study, we're actually providing people with smartphones. And then the smartphone already has the app pre-installed on it. So it makes it very easy for this population to participate, because we're actually working with an older population that in general does have some trouble navigating some of these newer technologies. So we want to make that experience as easy as possible for them. But we realized that because we made the experience as easy as possible for them, that it might not be the most externally valid, way of doing things. And that's what we're going to look, to in the future iterations of the project, is to, rely on people's own smartphones to download the app and use the app, because that's a barrier we need to cross. But in terms of, I think, ultimately accessibility and the ease of access, I think that we really created a very simplistic app that is actually, the language in there is accessible across, educational background. So I think we had it analyzed. Our material reads at I think at the 5th grade level, which is amazing considering that other information out there usually reads at like the college level or at least the high school level or above. We also created videos working with local prostate cancer survivors. So, for example, that you might see a video on our app of a person that you know in the community, but you didn't know they had prostate cancer. That's an eye-opening and truly, I think, transformative experience, because that now allows people to come forward and start talking about, their health problems. So I think that's one of the things that we really struggle at, especially specifically in our communities, that we don't really talk about some of those really, life-changing health problems openly in our community. Because if we were, I think a lot of more people will be engaging in those preventative practices because they see that their loved ones are suffering in ways, that really motivates them to make sure they can, I wouldn't say avoid, but just make sure they're putting in the proper health practices that it might help, lighten that outcome if they were to experience it.
That is so key. I mean, thank you so much for that reminder. Wow, you have such a robust experience, and it's really been nice talking to you so far. So let's talk about just your career trajectory. You've achieved quite a lot. Congrats on all of your achievements, by the way. What would you say are some of your experiences and challenges of being a minority in a predominantly white academic and research environment?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I think one thing I struggled with when I first became an assistant professor was how to say no. That's something I'm still learning how to do now. I said yes to everything in the first 2 years of my employment as an assistant professor, partly because I didn't want people to perceive me as not a team player and or someone who was standoffish or combative. And so I simply said yes. And what happened into my maybe 3rd year, I was overcommitted. I was doing a lot of activities that were probably not the best use of my time. I was extended in a lot of directions that took me away from my research. So my projects that were funded by different institutions were now I was getting behind on those activities, and it led. I will say this, that I think some of the things that I did do that I said yes to did lead to a lot of, I think, great accomplishments and milestones, especially for the Cancer Center. But for me individually, I felt lost at a certain point in my time, and I didn't know what exactly I was doing anymore, because I was like, well, I'm an assistant professor. I'm supposed to do research and get these grants, but I'm really out here in the community almost 3 to 4 days a week, and I'm building all these, connections and these community advisory boards, but that hasn't really translated to any type of research that will propel my personal career forward. And I kept wrestling with that dilemma in my mind, like, okay, how can I balance this? How can I still be there for the people who I've developed these relationships, but also be there for myself in terms of protecting my career? And it was through those conversations I had with myself that I was finally able to create the prostate cancer screening trial for Black men, which was a combination of all those efforts I put in the community, as well as from some of the research ideas I've been playing around with during that time. And after that, that helped me gain my confidence back in my ability to be a researcher and still do community work. Because at a time, I was really thinking hard about, I have to do something drastically if I want to really change my career trajectory.
Thank you so much. I mean, it's just actually humbling hearing you say that, because you don't look like someone that would have a problem saying no. And I mean, I don't know, a part of me that just thought it was something that was very more common in females, saying yes to all kinds of stuff. But for you to be able to say you had that struggle as well, and knowing just how accomplished you are, I think that's really refreshing to hear. So thank you for sharing that.
No problem. It's a lot of people experience this. I wish people would talk more about it, but yeah, I struggle with it for quite a few years.
Okay. I mean, thank you for normalizing that. You've alluded to just the people who have helped you shape your career path. I mean, beginning with Dr. Robinson from your college days. Are you able to tell us some of the people who have been most influential, or the people actually who have been the most influential in shaping your career path?
Oh, yeah, of course. I'll start from back in time and get to the present. Dr. Leslie Robinson, I can say her name over and over again because she deserves so much credit. Dr. Ward, my doctoral mentor / advisor, who I put on the same pedestal as Dr. Robinson, and I speak with him very often through email, in person. He's just been such an incredible mentor to me and exposed me to research in a way that I never expected. For example, I'll share this one story about Dr. Ward. So I always tell people I've never been out of the country, but my first when I was able to do it for the first time, it was actually through research. So Dr. Ward invited me to go with him to Beirut, Lebanon, for a conference on tobacco. Yeah, what? It's a crazy story. I won't get into details too much.
What year was this?
This was, I think, in 2015 and 2016. It was actually during the height of the Syrian civil war.
Wow.
So yeah, it was a crazy experience, but that shows you how much, he invested in me as a researcher, because I wasn't expecting to be able to do something like that, especially coming from a smaller university like University of Memphis. I wasn't expecting that kind of experience, but that completely showed me what you're capable of doing, through research, to be able to do, tobacco research in Syria. Or in Lebanon, I should say. That is awesome. And so, So Dr. Leslie Robinson, Dr. Ward, more recently, Dr. Bushnell and Dr. Kinzer, I think they've been, those two together have really transformed my life in terms of being an interventionist. So I'll caveat and say that when I was working with Dr. Robinson and Dr. Ward, I was mostly just looking at secondary data, didn't do a lot of interventions. But working with Dr. Bushnell, Dr. Kinzer, that's really, helped develop my skill set when it comes to developing a quality clinical trial. I think if I didn't have that time with Darla and Michael during my postdoc experience, I don't think I would be as capable of interventionist as I am now, especially in the area of health. Seeing what Michael does with his studies, learning from members of his team, has allowed me to develop a model for my team when it comes to doing a health clinical trial. So I'm extremely appreciative of that. And I want to also mention another part of my kind of line of mentors. So those are more academic mentors, but I think I really need to emphasize some of the community partners as well, because a lot of them have served as mentors for me. So top on that list is definitely Pastor Derek Scobie from the Ebenezer Baptist Church. Like, he's completely transformed my life in terms of being engaged in the community. Him and his church opened so many doors for me when it comes to really identifying community partners to work with, and for just great people just to know in the community. And I think from Pastor Scobie, I was able to meet, I think I look at him more of like a grandfather, but still just a really kind soul, super active in the community. Coach Marvin Mack, he's just an incredible human who's really passionate about prostate cancer outreach. And so meeting him, but he's been incredible to me. He looks at me like his younger brother. Like, these are people who really, they've been kind to me. They've invested time in me as I have them, and they've really changed the way I've been able to do community work here in the city, and hopefully one day across the entire state.
Wow, you're definitely glowing up. I mean, you've been having a glow in the studio since we started talking, but then you talking about your mentors, there's a special glow that just lit up in your face, and I could definitely see the impact they've had on you. So you've talked a lot about just the academic mentors, the community mentors, but I think the commonality there is you, and it's probably speaking to how you show up as well. So for people who are listening, especially for minority scientists, what kind of words would you give them on how to build meaningful networking opportunities and sustain them? Because building is one, but sustaining is another thing, right? Mm-hmm. So what are some of the best practices you like to recycle?
Yeah, people often think people often think it's the big things that matter in life, but it's really the small things. So there's some small things I do is that anytime I'm going to a community event that, I know the organizers of, or I interacted with someone at the event and they shared information with me, I email them within 24 hours, like thanking them, talking about future opportunities we can work together on, just, wanting to get to know them more. That email happens like automatically. It's an automatic thought for me. And I think that helps, really build those connections, because sometimes I've seen this actually personally, no email will be sent after the event. And you're like, what? Well, that's something for me. That's a given. If I'm partnering with someone to host an event, you guarantee, like, once I get home, I'm sending a thank you email for bringing us out into the community. Another small thing is that, people, we're 9 to 5 people, but sometimes when you're in the community, people want to call you after hours. Now, you can set boundaries, of course, and say, no, I don't take calls after hours. But me, I don't set those boundaries, that well. I'm like, you can call me or text me, and I'll probably text you back, after 5. And that also helps too, because it shows you that you care about them. They're not just a work relationship that's constrained by that 9 to 5 work week. They have access to you outside of those hours as well. So those are just some of the examples of the small things that really matter. The big things do matter. Definitely want to be there for those, but that's expected. But it's those small things that I think that we really struggle with when it comes to building those relationships.
I mean, so true. So true. And I think it goes back to intentionality and, building that community and, being consistent as well. So thank you for that reminder. This is so great. So great. The responses have been so great so far. You wear a lot of hats, right? And you do so much. How do you maintain that work life, the balance or integration? How do you do that?
So that's a great question as well. So I'll talk about kind of the first half of my career being an assistant professor, and kind of this second half that I'm currently in. So in the first half of my career, I simply did everything. So I really did wear all the hats, and so that kept me very busy, sometimes way past that normal 9 to 5 working hours. And it left me very drained. But I persisted because I was focused on that goal that at the time I saw that I could obtain. But eventually that became too much, and it started affecting my sleep, and I wasn't able to derive as much joy from those activities as I once did. And I felt that those goals were now getting further away because I was just simply doing too much. And then I made the decision I took a risk, and I just decided to expand. And when I say expand, I definitely did. So I finally said to myself that, you know what? I'm going to start learning how to delegate. And I'm going to trust myself to trust others. And so that's what I did. When it came to the community work I was doing for the community advisory boards, I met a person through a qualitative research class that I thought would be extraordinary in that position as kind of a community outreach liaison. And I talked with her, and she agreed to be in that position. And she's now doing a lot of the work to like the 10th degree, way much better than I could ever do at the cancer center. So I no longer have to do as much community outreach work as I was doing 2 or 3 years ago. With my research team, I once just had one employee working on my studies. I quickly expanded that to about 4 to 6 employees. And so that's actually increased the amount of research productivity I can do for my research compared when I was just doing it alone or with my one research tech. With my other administrative work concerning belonging and inclusion, first, it was just me and my associate director, but we've quickly grown to about 1 or 2 employees, and they're now doing a lot of those initiatives that we were once doing as the directors of belonging and inclusion. And so it was me being comfortable and okay with delegating that's allowed me to free up the space to really have a more, I think, balanced work life. And so now I have more time to do things that I love outside of work, which includes like martial arts, playing video games, watching anime, and spending time with my partner. So whereas a couple years ago, it definitely was not like that.
Wow. I mean, if there's one thing I've picked up is that you're definitely not doing it by yourself. You've also learned to seek help and diversify your team, delegate, so that way you're freeing up your mind to do higher level stuff. So and I think that's a mistake a lot of us make. I did make that in the beginning years of my career. I don't know why I thought I could do everything by myself. It took me a while to be able to hire staff, even though I had the funding for it. And I wondered why. Like, why am I just drowning in so much work? So to those who are just entering their career, the first thing you need to do is to make sure you find help. Be it a postdoc. Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I said just to add to that.
Yeah,
I'll remember telling myself and other assistant professors at that time, like, protect your startup budget. Don't spend it because you have to do all of these things. And now I'm like spending it so much. They're telling me, Adam, you're out of funds. You cannot spend this money anymore. I'm like, well, I'm sorry. Let me find another source. So
I think the beginning part of it, of course, you're holding on to it because you're like, I don't know when next I'm going to get funding, but you'll get funded, put in the work. Yeah, I hire help because it's going to help you just free up time to do more stuff. Oh my goodness. The lessons we'll learn eventually. So we've talked a lot about, your career, your early years, of course, your community engaged approach, networking opportunities, work-life balance, right? Now, looking ahead, what do you think the future of your research will be like?
Oh, wow. That's an amazing question. So when I'm thinking about my research program, I think about it in terms of like lines of research that I could, leverage for potential funding in the future. So one line of research that I'm focused on right now is the prostate cancer screening research focused on the Black population. And I think that's one line of research that has a lot of data supporting it right now. So I think that's going to translate to, a lot of big grants, maybe in the next 2 or 3 years, particularly in the area of home health, PSA testing, and just prostate cancer disparity elimination within that population. Now, another line of research that I mentioned earlier, but it's maybe less active, but will probably be active in the next 2 years, is my mobile health research in the area of smoking cessation. I think that's a very important health behavior that's contributing to a lot of health disparities between the Black and white population. And I think mobile health is a great method of treating smoking behavior. And so I'm currently developing a line of work that's very similar to my mentor's work, Dr. Kinzer, when it comes to providing financial incentives to encourage people not to smoke. Now, where I would really want to enhance that area is by trying to expand contingency management into that idea of multiple behavior change, where you're actually not only changing one behavior, you're changing 1 to 2 or 3 behaviors at the same time or concurrently, or one after the other. And because I believe that contingency management is a powerful tool. It's not an advanced strategy. You're just paying people to hopefully do the right thing. And so what I'm doing in that space is I'm actually developing an intervention that not only incentivizes not smoking, but incentivizes people to be more active, because there's actually research showing that if you're more active, it helps alleviate some of those symptoms of withdrawal that people get when they're quitting smoking, as well as some of those cravings and urges associated with smoking cigarettes. So I'm taking 2 activities that are actually very synergistic, not smoking and physical activity, and trying to supercharge those behaviors by providing financial incentives for engaging in them. So I think that's another line of research that I'm working on that hopefully will yield some promising results. And then the third line of research that I'm really starting to develop now that the HPRC, or the Health Promotion Research Center, is expanding, is looking at biomarkers associated with poor health behaviors and good health behaviors. And so that line of research is starting to come online, and it's going to require a lot of collaborators, because I'm not a person who knows how to use that type of data, those biomarkers. That's a world I don't understand, but I do understand the world of health equity and health disparities, and I really want to take it into that space, because historically speaking, my community, our community is not involved in that space a lot. Genomics research, collecting biosamples, that's something our population really struggles with. And so to increase participation in that space will help a lot of research be more generalizable to our population. Because I think one thing that we're struggling with in science is that we have a lot of these amazing findings, but they're not really sometimes either not relevant or just inaccurate for our population, because we were never involved in the research to begin with. So I'm hoping that I can, change that just a little by trying to really get, African Americans and Black people here in Oklahoma involved in that line of research. So that's another line of research that I'm starting to develop right now. So hopefully that was a mouthful, but I just
it's
kind of lines of research that are
Yeah.
all kind of focused on addressing health disparities and different.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, wow. You're going to be very busy for the next 20 years, which is great, So you do mobile health intervention, and you're also, getting more training in being an interventionist. How do you foresee artificial intelligence further transforming the landscape of what you do? And what role might it play in, your future research directions, especially with the mobile health stuff?
That's a hot topic. And I don't think we fully understand the consequences of AI entering into this world like it, has. I know academia has kind of tiptoed around the issue. And actually, in some cases, they've been very came out hard against AI in terms of banning it for certain uses. But I think in the future, there will be immense, value for AI. One of the things that I do because I work with the Black and African American population is I develop a lot of culturally tailored interventions. And when I try to tailor down to the individual, meaning that if they have a certain characteristic, let's say they attend church versus not attending church, you can develop content based off that, but depending on the extent to which you want to tailor an intervention, that can mean you're creating a lot of content for a specific intervention. And so where I think AI can come in and help is that if you have a certain characteristics you want to tailor on for your population, you can actually work with AI to generate culturally tailored material based on the information you give to the AI, website or software you're using. So if you give the AI very specific information, it can give you very specific information back. And hopefully, I think in the future that can develop some really creative and powerful tailored interventions for specific individuals or populations.
I like that. I mean, it's balancing caution because, of course, you're right. There's so much you don't know yet, and it's having to be open, but at the same time cautious about it. So that, cautiousness, but openness that you have to, thread when it comes to something very new. We're kind of winding down now. And I recently started doing something on the podcast where I have the last guest leave a question for the next guest. So this is a question for you from Dr. Natasha Bray. And she would like to know, how do we rebuild communities so we are meeting the healthcare needs of the people we're passionate about? Her premise was that for us to get things right, we need to go back to rebuilding trust within those communities of interest. So her question for you was going to be, how do we rebuild communities so that we're meeting their healthcare needs?
You said, how do we build communities?
Rebuild the communities, because her premise is that we've lost a lot of trust as academics, working in those communities. What are some of the ways we can go back and rebuild these communities so we are meeting their healthcare needs?
Some ways. Oh man, I think investing resources in the community is a great way to start rebuilding that trust. I look at what I did when I first became an assistant professor, when it came to my community-based research, that area of my work that I was building. I didn't spend a lot of time, as I said earlier, doing research. I actually focused on their needs specifically and invest in making sure the Cancer Center could invest resources to help facilitate those services they were looking for. The northeast part of Oklahoma City, they have their relationship with the university and the campus as a whole, is very it's not strong. And I think it's better than it was a couple of years ago and decades ago, but it's still not as strong as I think it should be. And there's a lot of distrust of the university and the campus. And there's a lot of times that I think people at the campus maybe have taken advantage of that community. And so I wanted to change that. I didn't want to contribute to that narrative. I wanted to do something different. And so when I came, I simply told them that we're going to be there for you. If I say we're going to do something, or if you need a sponsorship, or if you need this specific resource for your community event, I'm going to make sure it's there, and I'll send as many emails and do as many phone calls to make that happen. And that's what I did for almost 2 years. And then when I finally, made an ask, and they were there for me, and they trusted me to make sure. They trusted me of their time, of their resources, of their audiences that they have worked really hard to gain. And I really appreciated that. I was really, and I'm still to this day very protective of that, because I don't want to, turn back the clock and go back to that time where we couldn't work together as people. I think we all thrive when we're able to work with our communities, especially within our area. I think the one thing that I was always saddened about is that, the northeast part of Oklahoma City is just right outside, it's basically on the campus. And yet,
I know. Yeah.
And yet people, were not coming to be treated at the cancer center, or didn't know what the cancer center was. I'm like, this is not right. Something needs to change. And so I did my part, and hopefully, I helped to really change how, people perceive our campus and definitely the cancer center.
Wow. Thank you for that. I've tried the encouragement to keep doing what we're doing, but how do we also make sure that our work is inclusive of the environment that we're working, of the people we're passionate about, the research interests? We can't separate the topics from the people, right? So having to bridge those communities and rebuild trust. Thanks for those wonderful nuggets you just shared. Now, what question would you like to recycle for the next guest? And I'll make sure to ask them as well.
Wow. Can I think about this for a couple moments?
Sure.
When you are finishing your career, when you're about to retire, what do you want people to say about the work that you've done? What do you want people to say about the impact that you made on science in the field?
So basically your legacy, right?
Yeah, your legacy. Yeah. What is the legacy you want to leave behind in science or on the world in general?
Okay. Got it. Thank you so much. Fun question I'm going to toss out. If you're hosting a dinner party with history, and I know you like good food, if you're hosting a dinner party with, your favorite people in the world, it could be scientists or just anybody, what's going to be on the menu, and who are you going to be inviting?
Oh, that's a great question. So I will be inviting a lot of historical figures and a lot of entertainers. Some people that come to my mind right now, some of my personal heroes: The Rock, Will Smith. I would probably have Abraham Lincoln, George Washington. People, Aristotle, Socrates. It'd be a very eclectic bunch of people who would be at my party. That's just how that's how my mind works. And the food, it'd be a variety of food, from like steak, ice cream, probably have pizza for those who enjoy pizza, although I myself don't enjoy pizza a lot, but people do in general. I drink basically water. I'm not much of a drinker of like alcoholic beverages or Cokes and stuff. But for the people who will be at the party, I will definitely have that there for them. And I would definitely want that night to be more, not of like a party type of environment, more like a deep discussion. And it's funny. I mean, you have like entertainers on one side and philosophers and scientists on the other. Like, I wonder what kind of discussion we would have, but I'll just be excited about the possibilities that can be created from such a gathering, and just be able to sit back and watch people, truly think about some of the deepest issues that are affecting the world today.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I have very much enjoyed our time together and learned a lot about you. Especially just what has built you to who you are today, your tenacity, your passion for the work you do and the population you're serving, and your message about balancing rigor and being intentional, and reminding us that it's the small things in life that really go a long way, and all the ways you're making it work. your networking, your intentionality. Those are some of the things that I would, leave with me today. And I think it's also going to resonate well with the audience. So I just want to say thank you so much for your time. It's really been a wonderful experience having you on the podcast today.
It was absolutely my pleasure. And once again, thank you for the invitation to come on. And just want to wish you well in your work. And I want to wish the audience well in their work and their careers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And please send more people our way. We're looking to talk to not just PIs, but anyone who supports them. So your staff or the support personnel you work with, we just want to keep diversifying voices of people doing great things in Oklahoma and highlighting clinical and translational research. So please send recommendations our way. All right. Have a great weekend, Dr. Adam. All right. Bye-bye. All right, everyone, that was the GROklahoma Podcast, and this was a fun time today. I learned a lot. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. So if you'd like to come on the show, just email us at GROklahomapodcast@ouhsu.edu. Be more than happy to host you. It'd be a pleasure to have you on the podcast. In any event, I remain your host, Dr. Mo. Catch you on another episode of the GROklahoma Podcast. Bye for now.